Finding more flow in our lives brings with it the insight and the fuel of a higher order of meaning. And while flow is common in our workplaces, as I've talked about in other videos, we don't all live to work. For many of us, flow comes outside of work when we are practicing our hobbies and spending more time doing the things that we love. The problem, as I'm sure you can appreciate, is that there are many tempting time wasters that pull us away from doing those things that we love the most in our free time. And this really became apparent to me in the past year as I realized I didn't check off a lot of the goals outside of work that I had wanted to do for myself. So what follows is the outline of the 4 steps that I took to stop wasting my evenings and the time spent outside of work so that I could make the most of my free time. And this also had the nice bonus effect of making me actually feel more relaxed and recovered during that free time where it's meant to be. So the first thing that I did was I identified which activities I was missing most out on. And as I mentioned last year, I did not get around to doing a lot of the things that I loved to do in my free time. And in part, I blamed it on my back. I had suffered a disc herniation last Christmas and for several months in the first part of last year, as well as multiple repeating injuries from it. I was out of commission for several weeks at a time. This really put a damper on my mood, but also made it so that it was difficult to do some of those things that I really like getting out in nature for hikes or biking and mountain biking and doing the different activities, especially in nature, that I would normally spend my free time doing. Even things that generally we feel more connected and calm through, like community events or local sports teams. It's a big part of the annual cycle for me in playing ultimate frisbee and volleyball in the winter, things that I did not get to do enough of last year that I really want to focus my time on. And that's what I'm kind of looking towards, not wasting my evenings as much this year on. Now, with these goals in place, and even doing things like spending more time deep reading books so that I can learn and develop new skills, something that is important to recognize is that we often get sucked into these time wasters that we totally lose track and forget how important these other aspects of our life are. And that's where the second step comes in, which is you need to schedule this high quality leisure time the same way that you would a to-do list. And your first instinct might be that this sounds like a huge chore to want to schedule your free time or those hobbies and activities that you love to do. But because there's so much temptation around social media and, watching more television or binge watching Netflix shows, or Landman, especially on Paramount, is the one that I've been sucked into lately, we need to get away from always having that be our default and instead schedule in that high quality leisure. So this is where I think that something like local sports teams is great because, you have a repeatable and predictable schedule there. And so you simply schedule it in. You're not going to be on social media. You're not going to be watching TV during that time. But do the same thing for any of those leisure activities that you like to do that are solo activities, whether it's getting out for nature walks or deep reading a specific book that you're trying to really go into deep understanding of. Any of these things outside of social media and TV are going to really help you make the most of those evenings and weekends where it could otherwise just be wasted. And this means scheduling it in your calendar like you would in any other appointment. Now, create these time blocks. Do this to build that routine in place. Maybe eventually you don't need to constantly time block your high quality leisure because it's become ingrained. But if you notice yourself getting off track the way I have in the past year, it's important to do this step and not skip it so that you actually can achieve more of those things that you want to in your free time. Now, the next thing that I did was I removed notifications for social media apps from my phone. Taking the notifications off for the particularly salient social media apps that draw your attention in, whether for you that could be TikTok, it could be Instagram. I know Instagram messages or DMs or comments pulled my attention a lot. Same with YouTube and any kind of notifications from X and even Substack. I found that by turning those off and removing them, which for a period I had on for business purposes, but I was realizing it was taking too much time away from my free time in the evenings, and that I would just get sucked in when I was kind of tired and not in the mood to do something else. Just it's very easy to pull open your phone and flip through those apps and get stuck in that doom scrolling effect. So when you turn off notifications, it really helps to make a difference on how attentive or salient that is and how distracting it becomes in your life. So as you probably recognize for yourself too, spending more time on social media is not going to fulfill you in the hours outside of work. And that is the next point, which is to unsubscribe from as many of the streaming platforms as you can. Now I say as many as you can because, as I mentioned, I'm sucked into watching Landman right now, and I think that watching an episode or two of a show that you really like at the end of the day to wind down is not the end of the world. As long as you still have time to schedule in that high quality leisure and this TV time is not interfering with that. Be more of a minimalist about your streaming apps and social media platforms this year so that you can be a maximalist about life. This is the approach that I'm taking and the philosophy that I'm positioning my year around so that I can make the most of this time. The reality is it can be hard to overcome these temptations that are constantly served up at us to waste our time. So you've got to declare war on this resistance and be deliberate about what skills or practices or activities you want to spend your time outside of work on. I know I don't want to look back on another year and regret not checking off more of the adventure items on my list, and I hope that you join me in that battle to finding more flow. Now, this is an important topic for finding more meaning and flow in our lives. And if you found it helpful and want to learn more, YouTube has predicted that you will find this video next interesting.